Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month's theme is One More Day. It's tribute to Recovery Month and World Suicide Prevention Day, which is observed on September 10th for World Suicide Prevention Day. I think of the word recovery, and at its root in the beginning, in the original word, was actually comes from the meaning of to regain something or someone or something that was previously lost. Today we have a new guest. His name is Jeff Patterson. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight and just being part of the dialogue. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I was going to give a little disclaimer for those who are in the States. 988 is a suicide crisis lifeline. However, I do recognize there a lot of people who listen to us are not always from the States. So I do want to give up a few more suicide hotlines around the world, like in Chad. It's on the screen. China, there's also in Colombia. Recognizing World Suicide Prevention Day, and also in Congo. Just giving a few more. We have Germany and also Ghana and Greece. But, I always say people say it better than me, Jeff. So I'm going to go into a quote that came from Albert Einstein. He says, "Failure is success in progress." What comes to mind when you hear this quote, or if there's anything you would like to add?
Spending my whole adult career running a martial arts academy, it's kind of follows this philosophy in that you keep doing it until you figure it out. It's not one of those kinds of things that, I used to have this old teacher who would always say, a lot of times people would learn a new movement and they'd do it 2 or 3 times and they would say, I can't get it. And he'd say, well, do it 1,000 more times. And if you still can't get it, I can't help you. Then you need to go see a doctor. And it's kind of funny in that, a lot of times we get caught up in thinking that if we don't do it the first or second time that we're not able to do it. And it's so not the case. You look back in history at anybody who's done anything great and how many times have they failed before they made something happen, and it's, you want to look at life that way, and that we're always moving forward. We're not thinking there and stumbling over our feet and thinking about what we did wrong. It's like, how can we make it better and how can we move forward?
And when you're saying that, it reminds me of a lot of times when we have these awareness prevention months, or just it's about remembering. A lot of times, if I remember that certain things I have done can help me. Right now, it sucks. Right now, it's not going well. But if I'm remembering that it may get better if I take these small steps, and I totally agree that it doesn't. A lot of things don't happen in one go. We like to think it would. We have these one-stop shops. We have this, convenience culture where a lot of things are kind of done conveniently per se, but a lot of times, especially even in conversations with our loved ones or friends, a lot of times the problems or the situations are probably more long-handed, and maybe a series of conversations or communications that one may have to develop that trust and rebuild whatever they felt that was lost. And I feel that segues also in recovery and whatever you're trying to better yourself in, if that makes sense. So,
yes.
And there's one quote from an anonymous. It says something similar, obviously, but it says, "I'm bent but not broken. I'm scarred but not disfigured. I'm sad but not hopeless. I am tired but not powerless. I'm angry but not bitter. I'm depressed but not giving up." What comes to mind when you hear this? I know it kind of relates to the last one, but is there anything more when you see this quote? Anything that draws to you?
It's kind of the same thing. It's I think, we have the tendency to want to quit things that we don't understand. And so, I always tell people when they're coming to the meditative art,
Mhm.
they're to the practice for a reason. And a lot of times they don't give that reason a lot of validation. And so I always tell people that, if you want to take on meditation, spend some time and think about why it's important to you. Maybe you want to improve your ability to deal with stress and anxiety, or maybe you want to stay around longer and watch your grandkids grow up, or maybe you want to improve your performance if you're an artist or an athlete, whatever it is, and really find yourself a strong why. So it doesn't matter how many times you get set back, you're always going to get back up and keep working towards being healthier and being more in tune. And that's just kind of one of the small pieces that help you be successful with this practice.
I working in the mental health field. The question I asked Jeff is, are you allowed to get better? It's a weird question, but if you really think about it, some of the biggest barriers, at least from my experience personally, but also working in the field, is our biggest barriers are ourself getting in the way of progress or whatever we want to achieve. Like you mentioned a couple times, that we want things to happen quickly, but the process, when you enjoy when you learn to appreciate the process, that's the biggest part of it. That's the meat. When I back in the day when you mentioned martial arts, I used to do BJJ for a while, and I just remember just it didn't matter how many time I passed guard, didn't matter how many time I would be in any position. There's always room for improvement. So I just feel if you don't enjoy the process, you're kind of missing out. You're just looking at certain achievements, but you're kind of you're the sum of all the process that builds up who you actually become, if that makes sense, at least from my experience.
Yes, for sure.
There was a Surgeon General last year. I was came out when I was thinking about this month. I was just kind of gathering some information. Obviously, I like the one more day thing. Kind of for me encapsulate how short of a time someone can change for the better or for the good. A lot of times it's just you just need that extra, maybe going through a lot of things at once. But if maybe the best thing you do today is just get outside, go for a walk, just one more thing. And the Surgeon General wrote an 82-page article talking about we've been through an epidemic, but talking about loneliness and isolation that is kind of seems a little bit more present today. But one thing he did say I thought was interesting. This just some of the verbiage in the very beginning. He said, loneliness and isolation represents a profound threat to our health and well-being. Is the old saying, we are not islands. We do need to be around people, whether we're introverts or not. But he goes on further and says, and we can ensure our country and the world are better poised than ever to take on the challenge that lay ahead. Our future depends on what we do today when it comes to this idea of loneliness. And I know a lot of it kind of gets brushed to the side. I know there's a difference between being alone. I could be fine being alone in solitude, but there's something different with loneliness where I could be around 1,000 people and still feel empty. So I just wanted to throw this thought out there and just hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Have you experienced it? Do you feel it is a problem, or what are your thoughts?
So, I think a lot of people are turned to the meditative arts because they have something that's unsettled in their life, and one of the things that is so enriching about the practice of incorporating meditation into your life is that it really kind of hits you from all angles and helps build a good solid life foundation for anything that you do. There's something that we call the 5 regulations, and with any meditation practice that you do, whether it's a sitting meditation, a Tai Chi form, a Qigong set, a yoga practice, we cultivate these 5 regulations, and they are regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Regulating the body is the easiest one to understand. And it's the idea that, think about maybe a time when you're sitting at your desk at your computer and you've been there for 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward and your neck starts getting sore and you're just feeling very depleted. And then think about another time where the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you're very energized and you feel great. This one idea of learning how to maintain our skeletal alignment and stay in good posture throughout the day can hugely affect our overall energetic state and our mental state as well. Then we have regulating the breath. Regulating the breath is a lifelong practice. It's very complex. There's so many different breathing strategies. And in fact, oftentimes they refer to Qigong as the science of the breath. Well, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods of breathing strategies and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of breathing meditations. And what I mean by yin breath is, if you've ever listened to somebody sleep, their natural breathing pattern is a longer inhale and a shorter exhale. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so if we want to emulate that style of energetic work in our meditations, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale. And this is great for dealing with anxiety and depression. This is great for improving focus. There's a lot of ways that we can use the breath here to get different outcomes. Then we have the yang side of the breath. And the yang side of the breath is more aggressive. It's like you ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is put tension in the breath, make it audible, you exhale. This helps generate power and energy. And so as we start learning how to use the breath as a strategy, and in Chinese philosophy, they call this balancing the kan and li, or the water and fire. Now, everybody goes through the day with emotional ups and downs. Some people are like a roller coaster, others maybe a little more balanced. But when you start noticing yourself get excited, we can use the breath to find a little more balance and bring it back down. And when you see yourself feeling a little depleted, we can use the breath to help build that back up again. And so using the breath as a tool now becomes a support system in our overall physical and mental energetic states. Then we have what we call regulating the mind. And regulating the mind, again, like the breath, is a lifelong journey. And, one of the most common things I'll hear people say is that I tried meditation, but it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. And, somewhere along the way, people have got this misconception that meditation's meant to be this thing that you're in this state of nirvana and you're never distracted by anything, and it's so not the case. I've been studying the meditative arts for 36 years. I've traveled around the world many times and trained with some amazing meditation practitioners from all over the planet. And I've never once met anybody who doesn't get distracted. Everybody gets distracted. It's the way of life, right? And so when we do meditation, if you sit for, say, 20 minutes or do a 20-minute movement practice, you may get distracted 50 times during that 20 minutes. And every time you get distracted, you recognize the distraction, you use your breath, you use the posture, you use the movement to help bring you back to focus. And now if you do that every day, every week, every month, every year, eventually you start building up so much power that every time you get distracted, it's easy to come back to center. And now it doesn't matter if somebody throws you off with something they say, or you have a stressful day at work, or whatever it is, you can use these tools to help find that balance in that center. There's this this story I really enjoy about these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a rainstorm, and they come up to this big mud puddle, and on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful lady who's standing there in a white dress, and she's over there crying, and the older monk yells across the puddle and says, "Ma'am, are you okay? Is there anything we can do to help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, and if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." And so he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle and picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles further down the road, and the younger monk at this point is just furious. And he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch ladies, but yet you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down at him and says, "You're still thinking about that lady? I left her back there at the puddle." And it's a simple story, right? But how many times in our life do we get 2 miles down the road before we even realize something's bothering us, let alone let it go? And so learning how to control the mind and be able to come back to center and find that balance is one of the essential tools in a meditation practice. And then the next regulation is regulating the energy. And this idea of regulating the energy, we could literally talk about for the next couple hours. However, just to kind of give you a brief understanding of it, with a lot of meditative practices, we do different energetic circulations in the body, and we'll bring the energy inward, we'll expand the energy outward. And when we learn how to regulate the body, the breath, and the mind, circulating the energy in the body is very easy. And then the last regulation is regulating the spirit. And regulating the spirit is a very profound idea. And it's one of those things that monks who live the lifestyle and that's all they do, they work towards this stage of enlightenment, and as I mentioned, I've traveled around the world many times, trained with some amazing teachers. I've never once met anybody who's enlightened. And so this idea, though, is the foundation of any meditation practice. It doesn't matter what you do. If you cultivate these 5 pillars, you can build a good, strong foundation and get a lot of benefits out of the practice.
Hearing it was. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I feel kind of a novice because when I was especially getting out of the military, and I had some mental health struggles, and I just remember I used to I practice, even still to this day. I do progressive relaxation breathing techniques from like my feet. I tense it up all the way to my head. I also do mindfulness a lot of times, and those practices for me, at least, as I got distracted. And when you were mentioning distracted, because there were times when I really needed to continue to use them because they were fundamental for me getting to where I'm at today. And yeah, a lot of times I would say what people would say. I would say, "This is not working. What's the point?" But I kept doing it. It did help me build a foundation, so it made me calm, maybe be able to get myself through deep breathing or the things I've learned along the way, and it helped me, I guess, navigate the best I can with the knowledge I received and all the therapy I've been through to navigate life even in the most pressing times. So when I'm working or dealing with situations that are very stressful, I would say, at least from my little experience, that meditation and breathing techniques has vastly helped me through my journey. So
Nice.
Thank you for sharing. And as you're sharing, I do like to also give you, I'd like to pause right now, and we're talking, and it's been a great conversation, but I want those who haven't, haven't heard you or seen you, to kind of get a little bit about you. What brought you to doing what you're doing today? I'm going to give you a little bit of time to share why this passion for what you're doing, and anything else that you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. So, I was brought to the meditative arts in a bit of a roundabout way, in that it wasn't my desire to start doing meditation. I was a young guy. I was 19. I was very into Western boxing, and
Mm.
I used to go to this boxing gym that's just a few blocks down the street here from my academy. And there was a boxing coach there who was a very well-known coach. He had actually created national and world champion level fighters. And I really wanted to get to spend some time with him. So I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there, and work very hard and let him know that I was a disciplined guy, and that, he wouldn't be wasting his time if he helped me out. And so after following him around for about 3 or 4 months, he finally started showing me a few things. And he said something to me after about 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him that changed my life forever. In that he told me if I really wanted to be a good boxer, I should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I'm this 19-year-old kid that doesn't know much of anything, thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And I had a lot of respect for him, though. And I started following the practice, and it's changed my life in so many ways. And, through the years, I've had 26,000 students come through my academy here, and I've literally heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about trying to promote these arts. I've written my last couple books on the meditative arts, and created my online program to get this message out there to as many people as possible.
That's wonderful. And how long have you had this school? Like where you're at? How long have you been doing this for?
The physical location here, the academy, I've had for 30 years. I started it up back in 1994. And, I have an amazing community here. I have students that have been with me for 30 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. And it's really kind of like a second family for me here.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And those who are listening and watching, in the notes, you'll find ways so you can find out more about Jeff and all that he's doing. I want to segue back into one quote that kind of spoke to me as we were talking. Is from Hunter S. Thompson. It says, "I don't see how you can respect yourself if you must look in the hearts and minds of others for your happiness." It kind of leads to somewhat how when you're doing meditation, when you're doing these kind of, at least from my experience, it's you. I felt the healing came from inwards, than outwards. So a lot of times, unfortunately, if I'm always seeking other people to, especially help me, and they can help, but you can also be very disappointed. But I want to hear your thoughts when you see this quote. What comes to mind, Jeff? What comes to mind for you?
Well, the meditative arts are often referred to as the internal arts.
Mm-hmm.
And internal meaning that it's time to look inward. It's time to focus on all of the little subtle things that are going on physically and mentally in the body, and really be in tune with this. One of the things that I think that people get thrown off with these days when it comes to meditation is that there's so many apps out there and videos on YouTube and things to follow, that I'll get students that come in here and say, "Oh yeah, I meditate every day, and I watch this video, or I listen to this audio." And while audios and videos are a great source to learn a practice, they're not meant to be replacing your ritual time that you're spending meditating every day, because again, they're called internal arts for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And you're meant to be able to look inward and really see yourself and kind of stay connected with the core of who you are. If you get caught up with wearing this mask everywhere you go, we're trying to protect people's feelings. We don't want to show them how we think. And so we're wearing these masks and putting these barriers up. So we're not really showing our true selves. Well, we go through society this way. And sometimes we get so caught up in living this way that we look at ourselves in the mirror and we're still wearing these masks. And the meditative arts are one of those things that help us let go of these masks, let go of these barriers, and stay true to the our true nature and our source. And I think that that's something that a lot of society is missing today. And that's why I strongly believe, that if everybody meditated 20 minutes a day, the world would be such a better place.
Yeah, and I can concur with the whole mask and how we all, if we're not careful. I think the hardest lesson is to actually, when you're able to, when you've been avoiding looking yourself in the mirror, when you had all these masks for so long, when everything that provided your external happiness or your external validation comes crumbling down. You see it a lot of times whenever life events happen, but there's no inner foundation. Your everything has to be kind of connected together very nicely in your little box. But unfortunately, life doesn't work that way. And for me, at least during the hardest bits, then I can't. Like I said, I feel like a novice in saying this, but I think when I stopped asking the question, well, when I stopped asking people to understand, especially when I was really struggling, Jeff, that was the first thing I let go of, and I had to replace it with something. I was going through therapy at the time, trauma therapy, and during that time, I would suggest mindfulness. I do tapping solutions. I was trying every single thing, and I just remember what really stuck to me was mindfulness and the deep breathing and the progressive relaxation, especially during. And I did that repeatedly, and I stopped trying to get validation from people outside to understand what I was going through, because at the end of the day, that took so much energy. To tell you the truth, that took so much energy, Jeff, to kind of explain something, but that they won't really understand. And then I feel that when I was able to center myself on what was working for me, I was surprised. Even in the hardest times, I'll be up there presenting. I've been a church leader. I'll be doing a sermon or whatever, and I would have these things come up, but I was able to still practice my breathing and be able to be present and then be able to be calm and share whatever I am sharing. So I just want to share that real quick as we segue. I do appreciate all the, I guess, the nuggets of knowledge you've been sharing with us today, and I want to ask you as we kind of not wrap up, but kind of we turn the corner. What have you seen? We touched upon loneliness and recovery. This is Recovery Month. You focus on meditation. You've been doing so long. What have you seen help? Obviously, meditation has is a big foundation. But what have you seen help people who are in recovery? Who are maybe people who've come to your school who've been kind of lost? What do you think has helped build or I don't know, get them towards more of a trajectory of healing? Obviously, it's their choice, but what have you seen? I guess is my point.
I think it's the holistic life approach to the meditative arts, because when you start integrating these practices into your life, it affects everything you do. It's not just about how you hold your posture or how you breathe or what energies you circulate in the body. It allows you to be more in tune with nature, and the closer you are with nature, the more rooted we are, and the more we can respond from a relaxed place of love, I guess. And this is so important in life, because when we're out of balance and we're off center and we're distracted and we're thinking about all these things that happen to us, and then we respond to somebody coming from that place, a lot of times doesn't have a whole lot of love behind it, and being able to have that balance and that focus is huge, and we all need more of that. And I think that the meditative arts is something that really helps you stay grounded and close to earth, which is something that we could all use more of.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about just this old concept. If you're unhappy wherever you're at, if you're unbalanced here, you could go anywhere in the world and still be unbalanced. You could go to on a big. I used to scuba dive. You could go down to the islands and scuba dive, but if you still feel this way, that's the one thing you bring yourself with you. And I think when we think about Recovery Month, it's really about self. A lot of times you have the people, and it's good to have the positive people around you. It's the holistic approach, but it starts with you, if that makes sense. So I do feel that if we're focusing on getting relief outside ourselves, we can be very disappointed because not everything outside stays the same. Nothing's static. Life isn't static, and life unfortunately continues to move on. But as I just want to ask you, as we wrap things up, Jeff, it's wonderful to have you here. Any final thoughts you want to share? It's been great to have you as we wrap things up today.
The only thing I'd like to leave your listeners with, it's if you have any desire at all to want to take on the meditative arts, find yourself a guide, somebody that's going to help save you some time, get on the path, and just be consistent. I've literally had so many students come through this academy, and the students that I notice that actually listen and they do that 20 minutes a day and they integrate active practices into their life and they keep that up for a year, I bet 95 to 98% of those students will do this practice for the rest of their life, because they'll see so many benefits by integrating these practices that they would be crazy to stop. And, for most new people, they'll try it for a couple weeks and then I'm getting busy. I get caught up in my day-to-day things, and you got to fight through that, because everything in life that is good and has value takes a little bit of work. So just invest that little bit in yourself. I love that saying by the Dalai Lama, and that everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. You gotta have a little bit of time for yourself every day. And if you do that, you'll get so much out of the practice.
Yeah, I was thinking about a lot of times I'm seeing clients, and time is always something elusive. We either have too much of it or don't have enough of it. And there's only 24 hours in a day, and when we set values, set boundaries where these things do matter, a lot of times the conversation, Jeff, goes to the point at a critical mass of, I would say to someone, it hasn't worked. We'll go through the conversation. There'll be obviously, I'm not minimizing, but it hasn't worked. So there's one person, I don't remember who said it, but he said, if nothing's going to change, if nothing changes. So I'm paraphrasing. So if you want things to change, you have to be open to trying something new. Rationally, that's the only thing. So being open-minded, I always think about Socrates. I think it's Socrates that says, I can't teach anything to you, but I can make you think. At least kind of think about you when it comes to recovery, when it comes to these ideas. Maybe you're not have mental health issues. Maybe you don't have these things, but maybe you want your life to improve. A lot of times it's just the small things that can build up if you ignore them. So again, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your insight. And there'll be notes in the description for you to find more about Jeff and anything else. And I do encourage you to, when it comes to our wellness, our overall holistic, a lot of times we put a lot of priorities elsewhere outside ourselves. I would encourage you to put the priority to you. Again, thank you, Jeff. Any last things you want to say?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Anybody who's interested in checking out my most recent book, The Yielding Warrior, I'm offering a free copy of that on my website. You just go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book. You can check that out. And if you do, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And it's always a pleasure to have any guest, but thank you, Jeff, for coming on and just continuing the dialogue. I want to share with those who are listening to stay updated. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our website. Leaving this last quote is from Roy McAvoy. It says, "When defining moments comes along, you can do one of two things: define the moment or let the moment define you."